Hi, welcome to Your Business, Your Rules. I'm Kat LeBlanc. This is the podcast for people who want to start and grow an online location-independent business so they can live a life of freedom and choice on their own terms. Welcome to episode 24 of Your Business, Your Rules. And I'm here today with Maria Doyle, who is an online learning materials developer, to talk about location independence and what that really looks like. So Maria was on the road for 15 years and now has been location independent for 6 years. So she's got a wealth of information about that and can share a lot about what that really looks like. So Maria, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Kat.
You're welcome. I'd love it if you could share a little bit more about what you do.
Yeah, for sure. So I started off in the world of education and training. So I was a classroom teacher for many years, teaching ESL. So I travelled around the world, working in a whole bunch of different countries, teaching English and teacher training, and then I moved into curriculum development roles. So I worked in universities and vocational education centres, and then ended up working as a consultant in an aid and development sort of environment. So helping create better teachers and better curriculum out in the Pacific and across Asia. So that's my background. And now what I do is I help people take their knowledge out of their head and create learning products out of it. So that they can create a recurring income stream and so they can sort of leverage their time a little bit better in their businesses. So I work with everyone from bookkeepers to skydivers to government departments, and I have a lot of fun. I learn a lot of really interesting information that goes in one ear and out the other. But it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Yeah. Sounds very exciting, especially the range of clients that you work with.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So great to hear what you do. I'd love to hear more about, your history with travel. So a lot of people that are listening to this podcast, they're potentially living in a place that they don't want to be living in. They're doing the dreary commute every day. And it sounds like you've had a history of making that work for you. You've lived all over the world. You said in the South Pacific, in Asia. Maybe we can start with the career stuff. Like, what was the motivation for you, and how did you manage to bring all of that travel into your life?
Well, I really didn't know what I wanted to do when I left high school. I just really wanted to keep traveling. I'd won a scholarship in year 11 to go and do 3 months of high school in Italy. And I came back from that to the school environment and a boarding school environment, which made it even worse. And I knew that I just wanted to keep traveling and learning languages and seeing more of the world. So I sort of, I guess, got, what do you call it? Travel fever? What's it called? Anyway, whatever that is, I got it. I got the bug, the travel bug. And so I went to university. I got really high scores. I could have done anything really, apart from vet and med and all the really sort of top tier sort of bachelors, and I didn't know what to do. So I focused on languages because I was good at them. And then I thought, well, if I can travel and teach English for a couple of years, like in a sort of gap year environment, then maybe I'll work out what I want to do. Maybe I'll work out what my purpose is. And I just kept getting amazing jobs. I just kept moving from country to country. I've had 14 overseas postings before starting my own business. So it just sort of happened. It was never really planned. I honestly thought English teaching and traveling was just going to be a gap year solution, or maybe a few years, while I worked out what I really wanted to do with my life. But that just, I was always have been a really energetic teacher. And then the people in my job were like, oh no, you have to be a teacher trainer. Like, you have to show other people how to get that amount of energy and enthusiasm into their classrooms, because most of the classrooms are so dry and so dull. So I fell into teacher training positions. And then I fell into sort of management positions because I'm a real systems person. So I can run a school, or I can sort out curriculum, I can sort out student lists or whatever. It's a superpower, and everyone can recognize that. So it was not really planned. I just kept following the things I was good at and just kept taking opportunities as they came. And yeah, my career happened. Was that the question? I've forgotten what question I was answering.
That was the question. It's all good.
No, good.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I mean, in my personal situation, So I went overseas after university thinking that I would also know what I wanted to be when I grew up, and came back. I was like, oh, I didn't get the answer to that, although I did live in Brazil for 6 months and learn to speak Portuguese. And I remember when I came back, one of my uncles said to me, like, oh, good, you're back now. Now you can get into the real world and get a real job. And I was sitting there
Oh,
thinking, no,
how many times did I get that? Oh my God. And what are you running away from? And why can't you stay in one place? And my answer to that was always, I'm just running towards life. I'm running towards opportunity. I'm not running away from anything. And settling down for me, like what, getting married and having babies and living in the suburbs, there's nothing wrong with that life. And I certainly don't judge people who have it, but it was just never for me. I was so adamant that travel and learning languages and visiting new countries and cultures was just higher on my priority list than finding a 4x2 in the suburbs. I mean, funnily enough, I actually now own a 3x2 in the suburbs. But anyway, that was just never a priority for me. Like actually going down that path was never a priority. So yeah, life just happened and I just kept chasing the dream. And I think there was a period there for about 5 years where I just chased summer. I didn't have winter for about 5 years. I just kept chasing summer. It was awesome.
that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And I'd love
Yeah.
to know, like, at what point did you realize, okay, like, I'm loving this, I'm experiencing different cultures, I'm doing new things, I'm, like you said, I'm running towards life. At what point did you
Mm.
realize, like, okay, this still isn't on my own terms? Because for my situation is, I was in, I didn't go to anywhere near as many places as you, but I moved to Germany. I was like, in the beginning, it was super exciting. I could, go to Belgium at the weekend and go to Amsterdam and do this. And everything was
Yeah.
really exciting, like being on a holiday all the time.
Yeah.
And I loved it. But I started to get this like sinking feeling like, oh, this isn't it. No, this isn't it. And I was always looking for like, okay, well, maybe if I moved and did a similar job in Holland, I was looking at, maybe that will be more fun. I was like, no, that's not
Mm.
really cutting it. And I had this period of a good 5 years where I knew the adventure wasn't over, but I just didn't know what the next steps were. And for me, it was taking away the, like my work had become location dependent because it depended on where I was sent or what role I took. And even though I was overseas, it wasn't cutting it for me and I needed more control. And I'm curious to know how that went for you, given that you moved so much.
Yeah, look, you could have just been reading my mind. That what you just described is exactly what happened with me. It was this sort of, okay, I'm a bit bored of Japan now. I have to come home and be someone's bridesmaid, so I may as well pack up here and find a new job. Oh, look at that new job. I'll be happy in somewhere else. Get to the new place, go, oh, it's just the same job in a different environment. And now that I've worked out where all the good restaurants are and I've worked out what I can do on the weekends and I've exhausted all of the weekend trips that I can do, where's the next job? And it just sort of was this ongoing, I guess, quest for adventure, and being any length of time in one job just got really boring. Because, and not, I guess not boring is not the right word, but you just felt stagnant. You were surrounded by people who came to work and whinged about the same things every day and just like, oh God, get me out of here. So yeah, it was a new place provided new challenges, new culture, new language to learn, new house to set up, new group of friends to create, new weekend trips to take, but the shine sort of came off it after, it always did after, a year or 18 months or 2 years, depending on who I was working with. So I got to the point where I was working out in the Pacific on an aid and development project. I was on, a consultant salary, tax free, which is, ridiculous and, about 7,000 times more than you earn as an English teacher. So I'd sort of hit the upper echelon of my career of where I could go in this industry, in education and training. I was project manager. I was in charge of, however many people in a vocational college. We had a, $17 billion budget or whatever it was over a 25-year period. So, I couldn't have found a more rewarding job, a more challenging job in another country. But for me, I just got to the point where I was like, I am so sick of packing up and shutting down, like packing up and selling off everything I've bought and then, turning up in a new place. I just got really tired of that sort of suitcase sort of lifestyle. And I came back and I bought a house and I tried the suburban thing for a while. found myself a boyfriend, lived like everyone else did. And that didn't really excite me either. So off to Kiribati I went and, on this big consultant job. And that was, the upper echelon of my career sort of moment. But then I got really sick. I ended up with multiple organ failure and nearly dying. And that was the point where I just went, what am I doing? Like, is this life? Is this all that life is? Like just one job after the other, offshore, onshore, never really having a stable community anywhere that's ongoing that I know that I'm not going to get bored with or shut down. And that was, I went through a real it was a really difficult time because what I'd known for the last 15 years, this career that had given me so much that I loved so much, I was over it. I was over the never really having any stability. But then when I had stability, I didn't like that either. So it was a real soul-clutching time. Like, what do you want? Like, are you ever going to be happy? So yeah, it was quite difficult period to go through to work out what was going to make me happy. And I think I've sort of nailed it now. I think I've got the best of both worlds. I've got a base in Bali and I've got a base in Perth. I live between them. I've got businesses in both places. So that provides its fair share of challenges, believe you me. But I've got really
Yeah.
beautiful communities in both places as well. So I get that community aspect. I'm part of a community choir in Ubud. In Perth, I've got, old friends, new friends, business people, business networks. So I've got the best of both worlds in two places, and I get to live wherever I want to live, whenever I want to. So for me, that having that location independence, it's not true location independence as in I just have a backpack and I travel wherever I want to. It's more about being able to travel and live and work in two places with two communities, and then, like I'm about to do tomorrow, go off on a 10-week round the world trip because I can work on the road. And I can do what I do from anywhere in the world. So I guess it is location independence in the truest sense of the word.
Yeah, I think it is because you're getting to make the decisions of what works for you, right? And I have to say,
Mm,
for me, I really considered the two base option because it's kind of hard to give everything up for one place almost. And
mm,
yeah, it was like a real consideration for me also getting away from winter and those kinds of things. So you're doing it on your terms, right? Which is what it's about. You get to choose. If you choose to have a place in Bali and have a place in Perth and that's what works for you, then great. And if you choose
yeah.
to drop it and go on a big trip, then you can also do that. And what I
Mm,
find works for me is being here in Australia, being from the UK, it's like super exotic for me, not quite as exotic as Bali. And yeah, getting to go on trips when I want to.
mm,
Cool. So you've made the transition and you're now have a lot more control over what you're doing, what responsibilities you take and where
yeah.
you are, which is really awesome. I'd love to hear a little bit more kind of on what that really looks like, because I think when people know that you are running your own business, they can be making assumptions like, oh, she doesn't need to work, or, she's just on holiday all the time, or, I'd love to have that lifestyle. Honestly, it's not for everyone. Certainly if you're on the road all the time, I would say, like, what is your
No.
day to day reality like being in two places, and what are you expecting for your big trip?
So yeah, it is a good point. And I get a lot of this like, oh, you're so lucky and oh, you're always doing these amazing things. And I'm sort of like, well, I don't believe in luck. You create your own destiny, you create your own journey, you create your own life. And it has not been easy setting up two businesses and having them both operating from two countries, one of which where I have lived and worked there over the last 20 years on and off. And I do speak the language. I've got a bachelor's degree in the language, which doesn't mean that I can speak it very well, but, I can still communicate. But far out, man, like a whole nother country, the systems and the regulations and the laws and what you do and don't have to do, they're so polar opposite from the Australian system. And you're just consistently not aware of what you don't know until you do something wrong. And then you're alerted to the fact that, no, you can't do that in this country. It's like, ah. So on a running businesses sense, it is a consistent, let's just say, challenge I was going to use an expletive there, but yeah, there are days where you just think, oh, I can't handle any more that's going to break my head today. You know, like if I find out one more regulation that now has changed again, and now we're not compliant again because they decided to change the rule for foreigners, or because they decided to change the rule for everyone, or whatever, I'm going to lose my mind. So, you know, that certainly is not a walk in the park. People, oh, you're so lucky to be able to work in Bali. It's like, do you understand the amount of headspace that goes to actually being able to legally work up here? It's very difficult. Then throw into that, you know, keeping 2 households running. I'm really fortunate in that I've got an amazing housemate here in Perth who pretty much looks after my house for me, and there's no problems with her. Although that in the past, oh my goodness, like having tenants who were nightmares. Oh my God, don't even get me started on that. But the stress of being somewhere else and having someone in your house that you do not trust to lock the doors or to, you know, keep appliances from
Blowing up.
going on blowing up. Yeah, like honest to God, like horror stories, absolute horror stories. And you sort of think they're going, it would just be better for me to sell my house. Would it just be better for me to get rid of this amount of stress, you know? So yeah, managing tenants in both places. Like I'm away from Bali for 10 weeks. And so I've got people staying in my house, but then again, it's managing them. You know, it's not Airbnb, but it's people who are going to make use of the space while I'm not there. So then having to manage them and have assistants go over and drop off keys and all that sort of stuff. You know, there's a lot of work that goes into it, and to keeping it all running and to keeping everybody happy. So yeah, the day-to-day reality is working on one business, keeping your eye on the other. It's living in one house, keeping your eye on the other. It's dealing with business inquiries from Bali, from Perth, from Sydney, from Auckland. It's organising client appointments that are across, you know, 450 different time zones. You know, this 10-week trip, I've got clients that I'm continuing to work with because they need some support, and they're well aware of the fact that I'm on a 10-week trip and can't guarantee the quality of the Wi-Fi anywhere I am. You know, that's just a reality of living and working on the road, is that you don't know if you're going to have consistent Wi-Fi at 10 o'clock on Wednesday morning, or you don't know whether there's going to be a screaming kid next to you in the co-working space or the cafe. You can't maintain a level of professionalism that you can maintain when you've got an office, a permanent office where you can control the environment. So yeah, that this 10-week period, my clients are luckily they're flexible. They know I told them that they needed to use up their their coaching bundles before I left. Otherwise, they'd be sort of at the whim of the Wi-Fi wherever I was. But they're willing to work with that and to work some pretty crazy hours with all the time differences, because, you know, Canada's 14 hours or 16 hours or something ridiculous behind us. So, you know, it's like me working at 7 o'clock at night and them 8 o'clock in the morning or something. You know, I mean, that's the reality of it. I'm certainly not complaining about any of this, but that's the reality of it. It just certainly doesn't, life's not dull. Let me just give you the ticket.
Yeah. I so was smiling through all the things you said. Like, for example, like the apartment I used to live in Dusseldorf in Germany, I own that apartment. And just last week I was in a discussion with my tenant, you know, getting into like, do we need to replace that? And can we do this? And it's like, you know, all of this facepalm moments of like, can't the dude just check this? You know, it could be easy and all of these kinds of things.
Oh
and
my
then,
God, yes.
Yeah. And I'm thinking about going on the road next year, and everybody that I tell this is like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. Because I'm thinking of traveling potentially for a year and getting a caravan, renting the house. Then what I start saying, and everyone's just like looking at me, their eyes glazing, and I'm like, yeah, but there's so much to organize. Like, do you understand the logistics of this? Like, I've got a dog. You know that you can't take a dog to most caravan parks. And then if you have to free camp, then there's this whole other dynamic going on. And it's like, I don't know if I'm going to feel secure. And what about the fact that I need to be able to work? And everyone's just like, no, we didn't want to hear those details. Actually, it just sounded really good when you were going to go away for a year. But there is so much that goes into it behind the scenes. Yeah.
But I think social media's got a lot to blame for this. You know, people see the crackbook version, you know, the Facebook version. You know, they see the caravanning trip for a year. They see the selfie with the sunset behind you, or, you know, clinking your glass of wine with your partner, or, you know, like taking your dog for a walk on some idyllic beach. You know, no one writes about, and maybe I need to do like the anti-travel blog, like, you know, just the reality. Like the other day, coming home on the plane, I was sat between, it was an absolute nightmare. I sit down and I've got a couple who are fighting with an infant on their lap. And I'm going, oh, gee, this is going to be fun. And then the guy moves me because it's like World War III happening next to me. And I go, oh, great, I'm sitting here. And the guy goes, oh, you can't sit there. The guy that's sitting in that seat is actually in the bathroom. He's really sick. He's vomiting. And I'm going, oh, that's just fabulous. And he's like, oh, but the seat next to me is free. I'm like, oh, okay, great. And so I move over to the next seat and then have to sit next to this guy who was literally like vomiting every 5 minutes for the next, 4 hours while I'm trapped in this sardine can with him. Then there's an 8-year-old at the front of the plane who loses his bowels about half an hour into the flight. They're calling for medics, and I'm just going, oh my God, I'm in a sardine can with vomiting people and people who can't control their bowels. Oh my God, this is the reality of traveling, right? Like, oh yeah, selfie at the airport with my cup of tea, like bullshit. Like the reality is that you can be trapped next to someone vomiting and booing for 4 hours. But yeah, I think this is the problem. People go, oh, traveling for a year, how glamorous. And it's like, yeah, you know what? Like the travel is fun. And I'm not just being a whinging, whining pain in the bum, but it is fun. And it's the adventure is what I chase. And that's why I do it. But the reality is often very different to what you see on Instagram or Facebook. And I guess that's
Definitely.
because no one really wants to talk about the reality of it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when I was in New York last year, I just assumed New York, there'll be amazing internet. It was
Yep.
unusable where I was. And it was like, okay, I have to navigate the American cell phone network scene, go out, find a shop, find a thing, figure out how I can get on Wi-Fi, make sure it's happening by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. When I went to Chicago last year, I basically got off the plane and got myself to T-Mobile as quickly as I could in order to figure out some kind of solution so that when I got to my hotel, because it turns out the hotel doesn't have Wi-Fi. It's like, hotels don't have Wi-Fi these days? Like all of these logistical things that can happen and you end up, it's definitely, I mean, absolutely. I had cocktails out the front of my very lovely hotel and, there's pictures of me by Lake Michigan, but you don't see the night before when I was going completely apeshit, like just trying to get myself some basic communication set up so that I could work. Yeah.
Oh, totally. The same thing happened for me when I rocked up in Samoa. I was flown over there by the government to do all this training for their teachers, and everyone's like, oh my God, you're so lucky, going to Samoa. Oh my God, that's going to be so much fun. I'm like, yeah, it'll be awesome. The first flight over there, I was sat next to this person who I think had like the bubonic plague. And I was like, oh God, please, just don't breathe. Just don't breathe. I can't afford to get sick on this trip. The next day, I have the bubonic plague. So I turn up in this like just state of face can't breathe. And I'm like, oh my God, how am I going to deliver 5 days of workshop in the cranking Samoan heat? I turn up to my hotel room. There's only air conditioning. There's no fan. It's a concrete block. So you have to have the air conditioning on. So then this sinus infection or whatever it is just is minging, like absolutely horrendous. I get to the place and I said, oh yes, can I get the internet, the Wi-Fi password? And they're like, yeah, sure. Here's the rates sheet. And I look at it and it's like $25 an hour. And I'm looking at them and I'm going, excuse me? Like $25 an hour for Wi-Fi? Like what planet are you on? Like, wow. And so I'm sort of going, okay. So I'd agreed to like talk to my clients this afternoon and wrap this thing up with someone else and get online and finish all my emails and blah, 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 blah. And I'm sort of going, $25 an hour. I've got about 8 hours of work to do before I turn up at this conference, and it all needs to be online. So let me just do some maths. That's going to cost me about $200 in Wi-Fi. And I'm just going, like, breathe. Seriously, please. Like, what do I do? My face is full of snot. Like, my head, when you know what it's like when you've got a sinus infection, like your whole head doesn't work. And my head is exploding at the front desk of the reception, just going, are you telling me it's going to cost me $200 to get a day of work done? Like, is this the only option? They're like, yes, madam. And I'm going, okay. It's like, but that's the reality, right? Like, that's the reality. And then it's like, oh, here's the selfie of me with like 700 teachers behind me. What I haven't taken a picture of is the fact that my clothes are literally wet through from sweat because we've been teaching out in the outside Manny Arbor all day. So, no air conditioning, no nothing. And I'm wearing a polyester dress in the middle of the tropics. Yes, of course I did didn't know that I wasn't going to be training in air conditioning. Like, oh, look, it's so much fun. And this is why I travel. You're just consistently challenged and you're consistently under the pump to problem solve and to find solutions and to, use the failures to learn how to avoid the next ones. It's certainly not a whinge, but it's fun. It's fun. It really is. I love it. But I don't think it's for everyone. I really don't think it's for everyone. You've really got to be someone who loves that challenge and loves taking very deep breaths and keeping your shit together. Are we allowed to say shit?
We can definitely say shit.
Yeah.
That's totally fine. And I think for most, I think there's graduations of this, right? So, I mean, I'm location independent, and the way that I do that is by pretty much not going anywhere for most of the time. I'm really excited about the fact that I don't have to go to work. Like, I end up in conversations with people and they're like, yeah, so when are you next be in the city? And I always want to go like, well, never. I'm never coming to the city. Like, I'm never going to just be in town. So let's make plans.
Yeah, exactly.
And I have to kind of explain to people that, no, I never have to go anywhere. So we should probably make plans to do something because it's not going to just happen. So I really enjoy not having to go anywhere, which is, kind of the reverse of what you're about to do tomorrow. But then sometimes I want to, right? And that means that I have the choice to. And then for many people, maybe they're moving out of a cold climate, they get to move to a warmer climate, which is also what I've attempted to do, not highly successfully because I moved to the wrong part of Australia. But that's just a thing that seems to happen to me every time I move to a new country, that I move to the cold part. But I'm sure I'll get it right eventually. But I think it's just about, being able to do it on your own terms and knowing that if you do choose the kind of the constantly on the road thing, there's a lot more to it than what you're seeing on Instagram. Does that mean it's not amazing and challenging and fun? No, it doesn't. But yeah, know what you're up for.
And I guess, that's exactly right. Like, I would not change a single thing about the life that I've had, or I might take back that that night
the polyester dress
where I had a hangover. Yeah, the polyester dress, or the hangover that lasted 3 days, or whatever. But no, I wouldn't change what I've got for the world. I love it. I love the consistent challenge. I love the fact that my life is not regular and sort of, what's that word, routine. Like, I mean, I have my routines in Bali and I have my routines down here. My routines in Perth tend to focus a lot around food and wine and catching up with amazing friends who have, amazing lives. And I love finding out about their kids and what they're doing. And they live that sort of that 9-to-5 suburban life. And it's great. They love it. It works for them. And I love spending time with them because they're in their joy. And it's beautiful spending time with people who love what they do and where they're at. Bali for me is much more of a, it's much more isolated, and I can hibernate up there. My life up there revolves around yoga and sound healings and taking a bit more of a spiritual path, but not necessarily, hanging out with the feather tribe and, singing Kumbaya in the moonlight, dancing around, a cacao ceremony or something. Not that there's anything wrong with that either, but, I can choose what I need from each place and get that. And Bali for me provides like a bit of a sort of hibernation paradise, and it's sort of like living in a bit of a log cabin and just sort of hermiting yourself away and getting a lot of downtime and doing a lot of, sort of your soul work, the writing and the things that bring you joy. So, I get what I want from both places, but it's not what Instagram would make it up to be. And I think if you're considering a location independent lifestyle, you really need to think about, where you are on the scale of risk. Like, how do you consider risk, or how do you consider things like stability? Like, are those things important to you? Do they scare you? Do you not want them in your life? Do you want them in your life? What do you value, Because if you value stability and you value routine and you value consistency in your daily life, then being location independent is not for you. End of story. Like, it's just not. I mean, is that too much of a blanket statement? But I just honestly don't believe that it can work if they're the sorts of things that are, really, really important to you. And friends of mine who look at me and just go, I don't know how you do it. I couldn't do it. I'd end up a blithering mess if I had to deal with that level of challenge on a daily basis. And maybe they wouldn't. Maybe they'd step up and love it and realize that they, what they'd been missing out on their whole lives. Who knows? I don't know. I guess you can't make blanket generalizations, so I might have to take back that last bit of what I just said. But yeah, I don't know. I think you just need to know what's important to you and make sure that those factors are still there in an independent lifestyle, location independent lifestyle, because it certainly is full of ups and downs and challenges.
Mm. And I think if I think about it, so I am someone who needs a certain level of routine and needs a
Yeah.
certain level of stability. So it's interesting that you brought that up. But I need that in order to work. So as long as I know, like, I've got a desk, I've got everything on my computer that I need, I can arrange internet last minute if I have to. And
Mm.
I've got I can have quiet to work in, because I cannot work in any kind of group environment. Like, I can't go to a co-working space. I can't go to a cafe. I have no idea how people do it. Like, I'm the
Yeah,
kind of
neither can I.
person that can't have a conversation with someone if the TV's also on.
I'm the
I,
same.
yeah, like,
Exactly
my
the same.
brain just, I can't
Yeah.
multitask in that sense, even though you're
Yeah.
supposed to be ignoring the TV, but I can't do that. So,
Yeah.
but so I would not be able to constantly be on the road. But then what I do
Mm.
is kind of make decisions on, okay, well, I'm going to be in this place for 2 weeks. I'm going to be in that place for 2 weeks. And then I know that I've got, that desk in the room, and I've got this, and I've got these
Yeah.
hours. So for me, it's kind of about creating an environment so that I can get what I need from it and still
Exactly.
be able to do all the other stuff that I do. But I think it's, yeah, like you said, it's knowing what you need. And then
Yeah.
part of it's also just trying it, it's not something you have to do forever.
Yeah, doing a mini experiment. I know a good friend of mine who's a career change type coach. She talks a lot about mini experiments and not committing to a whole year of it. Commit to go and do it for a month or 2 weeks and see how you like it, see if you dig it. And I think there's a distinction as well between being location independent and being on the road. Like, being location independent just means that you can run your business from anywhere. So you could go and live in Spain for a year, and then you could go and live in Colombia for a year, and then you could go and live in the outreaches of Russia for a year. That to me is still being location independent. It just means that all of your business happens online, so you can actually conduct the business from anywhere. So if things like stability and consistency are important to you, then yeah, going and setting up somewhere that has the ability for you to work in a quiet place or have like constant access to good Wi-Fi, that's all possible if you're going to be somewhere for a certain amount of time. I think maybe I was getting confused between being on the road constantly, like working while you're on the road. So this round the world trip, 10 weeks, I've got 14 flights to about 8 different places that I'm going to. So, that's a very different scenario to working and living in Bali for a year. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's a holiday
Mm,
and I'm tripping around, and being able to work while I'm on this 10-week holiday, is sort of, I'll fit it in if and when I can, and my clients are aware of that. But being able to work while you're on the road as opposed to being able to work in a different location are two very different things as well. So, yeah, what do you want? Do you want to be able to run your business from anywhere, choose one place and make it work for you? Or, if you're caravanning for a year, as you say, we're going to be in this place for 2 weeks because it has good internet and it has this and it has that. For the next 2 weeks, we're going to be in a place and my clients will know that I'm not contactable because there is no good Wi-Fi, and we've made that decision in advance. So, yeah, I
mm,
think there's a difference between being location independent and living in another country, or traveling and trying to work while you're traveling. And I think it's important to know which one you're doing and how you can set yourself up for success in either of those situations.
definitely. Yeah. I think
Mm.
yeah, there is a big difference between them. And there's also graduations in between where you can make it set up how you want to.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience, Maria. It's been really interesting to hear like what's behind the scenes and how it all works for you. It would be
Mm.
great if you could share where people can find out more about you and yeah, your social media handles and stuff, because I know that your Instagram does look rather fabulous. I'm certainly jealous of some of your meals
I
and
know,
your
right?
views.
Yeah, I am a bit of a foodie, so that's just, yeah, it's sort of what I do. Every place I go, there's very rarely a picture of my face. It's very, or more often than not, it's a picture of my what do you call it?
Your
my
dinner.
yeah, my dinner. So I'm mariadoyle.com is my website. You can find out what I do there. My Insta handle is, this is a great question. I should know this sort of stuff, shouldn't I? I should, I am so like not doing it right. I swear to God. I actually think it's Maria Change. Maria and then change, CHANGE, because my logo is all about creating real change in the world through quality education and training. So there you go. Now check me out on Instagram. Check out all my yummy food. Yeah.
Thanks so much. We will. And I'll find your handle in the off chance it's not that, and I'll put it in the show notes so people will definitely be able to find you.
Awesome. Oh, it's Maria Create Real Change. There you go. I think my Twitter is Maria Change. I think it's Instagram is Maria Create Real Change, all one word.
Okay. So if you want to see what living in Bali looks like and follow along with the trip, that's where it's all going to be happening.
That is where it's all going to be happening. I look forward to spamming people's Insta accounts over the next 10 weeks.
Awesome. Well, have a wonderful time, and thank you for making time as well for us just before you leave. That's pretty incredible as well.
Oh, you're very welcome. No, it's always a joy to share the truth behind what really goes on in small business and in consultancies, like, you know, micro businesses. I think there's a lot of hype out there on the internet that makes it look like it's, you know, so much more appealing than a 9-to-5, but the reality often isn't spoken about. So I'm really happy to share the truth behind what it looks like. And thanks for inviting me on.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Kat.
Thanks for listening to Your Business, Your Rules. I'm Kat LeBlanc. If you like this show, I'd love you to subscribe, share, and leave a review on iTunes. And if you'd like to continue the conversation, head over to my website at katleblanc.com. Until next time.